Hello, everybody. All right. Happy Thursday. Okay, so I'm trying this new software today called BeLive because I wanted to be able to share some like pictures with you guys and be able to actually do a screen share with you. And if you do that directly through Facebook, you can't do both. Like you can't be on the screen and share. So we're trying this out. If anybody jumps on, let me know if you can hear me. Um, yeah, and just kind of bear with me as we go through this. So today I want to talk about how to figure out your ideal weight. And I think this is so important because I think so many women struggle with this. And there's a lot of like confusion and maybe shame around like what is your ideal weight, right? And I hear from some people that like, is it even okay to want to lose weight? Does that mean that I don't like love myself? Or I don't know. There's just a lot of like different thoughts about it. And if you read my post on this, one of the things that I said is that, by the way, got gerbils. So if you hear random noises, those are my kids' gerbils, Snowflake and Cinnamon in the background. Hopefully they won't be too loud. So I tend to see two different types of women that come to me either for coaching or consults or whatever. On one hand, I see women who are not at their ideal weight. And they know it, right? They've put on some weight, maybe they're not feeling their best, maybe there's some health complications with it. They're kind of stuck in this cycle of like overeating, emotional eating. They don't like the relationship with food, but deep down, they really struggle with the belief that it's possible for them, right? Maybe they've tried other diets and they haven't worked. And so they're kind of left with this feeling of, I don't think it's possible for me, right? Like I don't even know what my ideal weight is. And a lot of times with these women, they'll really back up their goal. So I'll say, okay, tell me your goal. And they will say, well, I mean, I would love to lose, and they'll give me a number. And they're like, but I mean, I know that's not possible. So I mean, I would just be happy with, 10 pounds. So part of it with those women is really working on understanding like what is actually possible for them and really working on that belief. But then I have other women that are struggling with, they're already at their ideal weight, but they don't know it. Like they're still like kind of like feeling bad or feeling like they're not doing something right because they're not, perfect. They have this little bit of fat here, or they don't have a six pack, or whatever it is that they believe is like the perfect body. So I really love, let's see if I can do this. All right. I really love this definition. Your best weight is whatever weight you reach when you are living the healthiest life that you can honestly enjoy. I think this is everything. So I think one of the biggest takeaways I want to give you guys, let's see if I turn this, okay, is that ultimately your ideal weight, let me scoot here so I'm in the middle, is something that you get to decide, right? So it's not something that you have to um, take on from somebody else. It's not something that you have to take on from society. Like you really get to decide what that is for you, and that's everything. But we want to look at finding the sweet spot where you are finding joy in the moment, but you're also able to find joy long term, right? So some people, when they hear this, a life that you can honestly enjoy, they think about weight loss and like, yeah, but that's miserable. I don't enjoy my life when I'm having to diet or having to, do a workout plan or whatever it is. And so we want to, a lot of that is just a thought that we have about what's possible. And so again, what you get to decide is what does that look like for you over the long term. And we really want to access this from our prefrontal cortex, meaning that we're looking at the big picture. So for some people, a little bit more of a structured program is what's going to bring them some joy. And for others, they're going to need a little bit more leeway in there. And that's very specific to the individual person. But again, it's something that you get to decide based on what you want your life to look like, both in the short term and the long term. So, for example, I see some women who feel like they have a lot of things that are bringing them pleasure in the moment, but it's costing them long term. So they're like, yeah, I'm eating all the foods that I want to eat, but then I'm having these net negative consequences that I don't necessarily want to have. But then I have other women that are being so rigid that they're not enjoying their life, right? And they're like, their joy is like in this future moment that they think they're going to get to, which they actually never can get to, right? Because it's like never good enough. So you want to find what that is for you. So for example, if you hear something like, and I know I've talked about this too, if you want to lose weight, one of the easiest things you can do is to reduce the amount of sugar. But what that looks like for you, you get to decide, right? For some people, I have some clients that are like, I just want to cut it out completely. And that's actually the easiest thing for me. Whereas others very much want to make sure that they are including that in some way, but in a very purposeful way. So you really get to decide what that is. Ooh, I'm going to play around with this for a minute. Oh, that's cool. Okay. So again, your best weight is whatever weight you reach when you're living the healthiest life that you can honestly enjoy. And so again, skinny does not equal happy. I've seen this time and time again. There's a lot of miserable skinny people, right? And also you get to decide for yourself what that is going to look like. Now, that being said, let's talk about some things that you can use that will actually, give you some data to help you kind of figure out if you're in the right place. Okay. So obviously we have the scale, but beyond that, what are some other measures? So you might have heard of, I have a dog trying to get into, of a BMI scale. So I see a lot of women that try to use or are told the BMI scale. So BMI is basically just, let me see if I can do a screen share with you guys. Okay. Let me see how this is. Okay, so if y'all can see this. So BMI is basically just a height and weight chart that is the same for basically every adult, whether you are male or female, depending on your bone density. I mean, it doesn't take any of that into consideration. So this is why BMI to me is the one that I'm least interested in for my clients, because can y'all see that screen? I'm wondering. I don't know. You might only be able to see me. But anyway, I was trying to share the screen. So BMI is basically just height and weight. So be really cautious with that one, because I think with that one, again, most men that work out are kind of come out as overweight or obese on the BMI chart, even though they're clearly not overweight or obese. So that's the one that I would throw out first, right? So one of the ones that you can look at is body fat percentage. Body fat percentage is something that we can use to determine, it's basically just how much fat you actually have on your body. Now, that being said, body fat percentage is a estimate, right? Unless you go and you do what's called a DXA machine, which basically looks like a, let's just stop share. I don't know what y'all can see. Hold on, let me let this dog in. So with body fat percentage, there's a couple of different things that you can use. There's some charts, and I will put I'll put some links below when I get done with this. But with my clients, what we do is we take measurements and then we can plug them into a chart that will give you an estimate of your body fat percentage. You can also go, if you go to a gym, trainers will oftentimes do something called a skinfold test, where they actually pinch the fat from your body and they measure it and they give you an estimate of your body fat percentage. Okay. So this is something that you can use, but what's really important with body fat percentage is that you just use it as a baseline and that you always know that it's just an estimation. So again, unless you're using really fancy machines to figure out body fat percentage, it's going to not be 100% accurate, right? So it's going to be up to 10% off depending on who's doing it. So if you do this with a trainer, make sure you get someone that has a lot of experience doing this, and somebody who is has done it a bunch of times in the past and is consistent with it, right? So when we look at body fat percentage, I want to show you guys this really great graphic from, let me stop this thing here. So it's going to make me go through it. Okay. Let me show you guys this graphic. Oh, wait, I want to take this one down. Let's see if I can get this thing to go. Okay, there we go. All right. So one of the things I see with a lot of people is they put a lot of pressure on themselves to look a certain way. And there's this idea that there's like the perfect diet or the perfect workout plan. And if we can just find that diet or that workout plan, then we are going to be able to, you know, create this dream body and be able to feel better. So I really like this graphic from Precision Nutrition. Okay, so it's the cost of getting lean. Is it really worth the trade-off? So this just goes into showing that what we think it's going to take and what it actually takes could be very, very different. And it's also helpful just to understand what is it that you want to do, or what are you willing to quote unquote sacrifice to get there. So I think this is helpful because it takes away a lot of the shame around this idea that like, I should just be able to do this, or any little bit of like body fat that I have is a sign that I'm doing something wrong, right? So here we start off and we look at body fat percentage for women. Ideally, we want to be 30% or less. And so anything above that is where we want to look at making some changes, okay? If we move down, let's pop this one up here. So a very, very easy transition and a really like healthy, easy place for most women to be is in this 25 to 30% range. So with this, some simple things that we can do: eat slowly, eat to about 80% full, 60% full, 80% full, okay? Focusing in on a little bit of balancing out our macronutrients, and then exercising 3 to 5 times per week, right? Which could be walking, it could be yoga, it could be anything, right? So this is a really, really doable and a really healthy place to be. But you can see, like, if you look at this picture, she still has a little bit of fat on her body. Totally fine, right? If we go to the next one, okay, stop number 3, we're gonna go to number 4. Okay, if we're going down a little bit more, and I'll include this, by the way, in a link, so if you want to look at this more closely, okay? If we do a little bit more, now we can see it dropping down to 23 to 25% or 20 to 22%. So now we're getting into a lot more lean, a little bit more muscle that's showing, but the things that we're going to have to do in order to get there are going to be a lot more restricting. So this is when we get into where do you want those trade-offs to be for you? What are the things that are going to bring you joy in the moment, but also joy long-term, right? So looking at here, adding in more things, being stricter. Now it's still considered healthy, right? But again, you're just doing more. Okay, so you're just doing more, and then less of eating desserts, you know, drinking, things like that. All right, and then the last one is where we can move from still healthy, but here you're really, really restricted in your lifestyle. And then this can move into unhealthy. So for women, we get below 16%, right? And so sometimes this can happen for women that are training for like a specific event, but this is not. So a lot of times this is the standard that we hold ourselves to, like this is what we're supposed to look like. And if we don't look like this, we're doing something wrong, we're not being healthy, and that is not at all the case. So the whole point here is there's a whole spectrum of what is healthy, right? And so it really just comes down to, as you move down that spectrum from unhealthy on one end, right, where we have a little bit too much weight, to unhealthy on the other end, where we have a little bit too little body fat, where do you want to be in that spectrum? Where on that spectrum is going to bring you physical health, but also is going to feel good to you and allow you to enjoy your life. And there's times when you might move on that spectrum just depending on what's going on, right? So in more stressful times, you might allow yourself to move up the spectrum a little bit. And then in more, relaxed times, you might move down the spectrum a little bit, right? But either way, the key there is there's like a big range of what is actually healthy, right? Now, besides your weight on the scale, there's some other things that you can look at in terms of what is healthy. So some of the things that we look at are energy levels, how well you're sleeping, overall how good you feel, and then of course your mindset around it, right? So just doing the actions coming from a more negative place. So if you're doing all the right things, but it's being fueled by this feeling of not good enough or frustration, isn't going to lead usually to this long-term feeling of enjoyment of your life. You can do the exact same things being fueled from an emotion of excitement and motivation and joy, and it's going to be so much more sustainable long-term. So that's the other thing that we look at is the actions themselves. Again, there's a whole spectrum here that you can look at. But if you're doing the things because it's coming from a place of not feeling like you're good enough or deep down not believing it's possible for you and just kind of going through the motions, but again, it coming from a negative place, the long-term benefits of that are not going to feel very good and not going to be very sustainable. So you really want to look at what is fueling your actions, what is fueling you going towards the goal of whatever your healthy weight is. So we're balancing out this joy in the moment, enjoyment in the moment, long-term enjoyment, and finding that sweet spot that's going to work for you. And again, you totally get to decide what that is and what feels good for you. And if you don't want to measure it using the weight, the scale, BMI, body fat percentage, there's a lot of other ways that you can determine for yourself if you are on the right path, if you are where you want to be, right? You totally get to decide. So I think the big takeaways with this is what is your ideal weight is something that you get to determine, nobody else, not society, not the magazines, right? You get to decide for yourself what that looks like. And then you just go through and decide what are the things that I'm willing to do? What are the things that I want to do? What are the things that bring me the joy in the moment and long term? And then we look at what's the emotion that's fueling that. If the emotion that's fueling that is positive, and you're feeling motivated and you're feeling joyful and you're accepting wherever you are in the journey and then just moving forward, that's what's going to bring long-term success. If what's fueling you in the moment is a feeling of not good enough, a feeling of kind of putting off your current joy for some future moment of joy, that will never really work long-term. It's going to spin you out into that cycle of not feeling good, using food as a way to buffer, then white knuckling, trying really hard to be good. That fails. And now our brain has just collected more evidence that this isn't possible for us. It ups the belief. It creates more of a feeling of hopelessness, and it creates this vicious cycle. Okay. So when you think about what's possible for you, if you're somebody in the first category that has all this evidence, you feel like I'm too old, my metabolism is too slow, I've had kids, whatever it is, don't back up your goal because you're afraid or because you don't believe it's possible for you, right? Weight loss is actually really simple. It's funny because I'll talk to clients and I'll be like, okay, so by the end of this month, you could easily be down 10 pounds. And they're like, what? Right? It's just so hard for them to even imagine that because for so long, the thoughts have been, it's just not possible for me. I'm stuck in this place. I'm always going to be stuck in this place. And then for my clients that come to me who have a lot of drama about it, who are already in an ideal weight, but are stressed about it, it's funny, like I'll sometimes say, okay, well, my goal for you is I want you to gain 5 pounds. And they're like, what? And the point there is that the weight itself has so much power over them. And I really want them to, whether they gain the weight or just think about it, learn to take their power back, right? Like the weight is not a big deal. It's really not. The point is that you can love yourself wherever you are in the journey. So if you're at your ideal weight, but you're not at peace, then the goal there is not so much about changing your actions, it's about changing your mindset. It's learning how to think about yourself in a way that brings more peace and more enjoyment in the moment and long term. So I'll post up this the link to this article that shows this. It's really, really helpful. And again, I think it really puts things into perspective about what is an ideal weight. There's a big range for what an ideal weight is. You get to decide, and then you just get to decide what things you want to do or what things you don't want to do. See, the dog is looking at my gerbils. Based on what those goals are for you. But don't back your goal up, and don't think that ultimately you're going to get to some point where your weight is going to give you a sense of peace or make you feel like you're worthy, right? That comes from your thoughts, that comes from the mindset. Okay, that is it. Thanks for bearing with me trying this new thing out, but I did want to share these pictures with you guys. So, all right, let me go save the dribbles from the dog. I will talk to y'all later. Have a great day.